The mall security manager mocks an old car, then goes pale when he learns the owner is the chief architect of the expansion project. It only took 3 seconds for Marcus Reed to be judged. 3 seconds enough for the security manager's eyes to scan his rusty 1989 sedan, his dark skin, and his understated gray suit. The man's smirk said it all. Not worth his time. Marcus was used to that look. In 20 years as an architect, he'd seen it in countless boardrooms, construction sites, and, apparently, now at the entrance of Wellington Grand Mall. The morning sun glinted off the mall's glass facade as Marcus pulled into the VIP parking section. The sedan coughed its familiar rattle as he shut off the ignition. To anyone else, it was just another old car. But to Marcus, that car held his first paychecks, his late father's handprints under the hood, and years of quiet victories. "Sir, I think you're in the wrong spot." The voice was crisp, clipped, and carried the weight of authority. Marcus looked up to see a tall, pale-skinned man in a perfectly ironed uniform, mirrored sunglasses hiding his eyes. His name tag read, Logan Carter, Head of Security. Marcus stepped out slowly, adjusting his suit jacket. "I'm here for a meeting." Logan's gaze flicked from Marcus to the car again, then back. His mouth twitched into a half-smile that didn't reach his eyes. "With all due respect, sir, this is reserved for project stakeholders. You may want to use the general parking lot around back." Marcus didn't answer immediately. His hands rested lightly on the roof of his car. He could already feel it, that familiar heat rising from under his collar, part anger, part exhaustion. But this wasn't the time to let it show. "I understand," Marcus said calmly, "but I believe I'm in the right place." Logan stepped closer, voice dropping. "Listen, I'm just doing my job. You don't want to make this harder than it needs to be." That phrase, Marcus had heard it before, often followed by worse things. He kept his voice level. "If you check your schedule, there's a meeting with the architectural team at 9. Logan pulled out a tablet from under his arm, scrolling with an annoyed flick of his finger. "I don't see your name here. Who exactly are you with?" Marcus looked at him evenly. "Reed Architects." For a moment, Logan didn't react. Then he snorted softly. "Right? You work for Reed Architects." Marcus allowed himself a small smile. "Something like that." Before Logan could answer, a black SUV pulled up, windows tinted. Out stepped a short woman in a sharp blue suit, phone pressed to her ear. She spotted Marcus immediately and waved, cutting off her call. "Mr. Reed, glad you made it. Everyone's waiting upstairs." Logan turned. His hand twitched as he lowered the tablet. The woman's badge read Mall Executive Board. Marcus gave Logan a polite nod, watching as the man's face paled beneath his tan. "Shall we?" Marcus said quietly, walking past him. Logan's voice faltered. "I am sorry, sir. I didn't." But Marcus didn't stop. He'd had enough apologies in his life. Inside the glass and steel lobby, the cool air washed over him like relief. For the first time that morning, Marcus let himself breathe deeply. The executive, Karen Lynn, was already pulling up the building plans on a digital tablet as they rode the elevator. "Logan gave you trouble?" she asked, eyes flicking sideways. Marcus shrugged. "It happens." Karen shook her head. "Unbelievable. We're supposed to be past all that." Marcus didn't answer. He'd heard that before too. At the top floor, glass walls opened into a panoramic view of the city. The conference room gleamed with white marble and brushed steel. Around the long table sat a mix of engineers, executives, and city officials. All eyes turned as Marcus entered, some with respect, some with curiosity. "Ladies and gentlemen," Karen announced, "this is Marcus Reed, Chief Architect of the Wellington Grand Expansion Project." There was a brief silence, just long enough to feel it in the bones. Then murmurs of recognition. Handshakes offered. Smiles, some genuine, some practiced. And through the glass wall, far below, Marcus could still see Logan standing next to his car, hands clenched at his sides. The same car that everyone else had ignored. That afternoon, as the meeting wrapped up, Marcus found himself back in the parking lot, sun sinking lower now. Logan approached cautiously. "Sir," he began. Marcus didn't turn right away. He slid his briefcase into the passenger seat, the leather smooth and worn like old habits. "Sir, I want to apologize again. It wasn't personal." Marcus finally faced him. "No," he said quietly. "It never is." For a long moment, Logan just stood there. No more words, no more excuses. And then Marcus got into his car, the engine coughing once before settling into its familiar rhythm, and drove away. The rust on the bumper gleamed like a badge. That night, Marcus sat alone in his small home office, staring at the blueprints spread across his desk. A half-empty glass of bourbon rested by his elbow. He wasn't thinking about the mall expansion. Not exactly. His mind kept replaying Logan's voice, flat and rehearsed. It wasn't personal. Of course, it wasn't. It never was. His father used to say that phrase too. "People will tell you it's not personal, son. But your skin walks into the room before your name does." Marcus leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes for a moment. The thing was, Logan wasn't the first, and he wouldn't be the last. But lately, Marcus had begun to wonder if the weight of all those tiny moments was starting to pile too high. His phone buzzed. Karen Lynn. He hesitated before picking up. "Karen." Her voice was warm but professional, as always. "Marcus, I just wanted to check in. That meeting today went well, all things considered." Marcus exhaled slowly. "It did. Thanks." She hesitated. "Listen, I heard about what happened outside. With Logan. A couple of people saw." Marcus didn't say anything. Karen pressed on. "If you want me to file a complaint, I can. You shouldn't have to deal with that." Marcus rubbed the bridge of his nose. "No. Let it go." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. The project's what matters right now." Karen sighed. "All right, but if it happens again." "I know." They said their goodbyes, and Marcus set the phone down, staring again at the blueprints. Lines, angles, curves. It had always calmed him, this silent language of space and structure. Unlike people, buildings didn't judge. They simply stood. The next morning, as Marcus walked through the construction site, hard hat in hand, he could feel the eyes again. Workers pausing, foremen whispering. He wasn't imagining it. The incident with Logan had traveled faster than email. Some looked embarrassed, others amused, and some he knew by instinct looked angry that someone like him held the title he did. A black architect in charge of one of the city's biggest commercial projects wasn't something everyone was ready to see. Marcus approached a group of foremen gathered around a steel beam placement plan. "Morning, gentlemen." They nodded, some more genuinely than others. One of them, a broad-shouldered man named Rick, gave Marcus a thin smile. "Morning, Mr. Reed. Heard about your car." Marcus kept his face neutral. "Oh." Rick shrugged, voice loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Just saying. You'd think the chief architect could afford something a little nicer. Guess that's your thing, though." There it was again. The coded language. Marcus glanced down at the steel beams laid out before them. "Funny thing about buildings, Rick," he said evenly. "Doesn't matter what the outside looks like. It's what's inside that keeps it standing." For a moment, no one spoke. Then one of the younger workers let out a low chuckle. Rick flushed but didn't answer. Marcus moved on, checking his clipboard, making notes. Calm, steady, like he always had. But inside, the weight pressed just a little heavier. That afternoon, Logan showed up on site. Marcus spotted him from across the lot, standing stiffly near the entrance. No sunglasses this time. Karen was there too, speaking quietly to Logan with clipped, professional tones. Marcus didn't approach. He stayed by the scaffolding, clipboard in hand, pretending not to watch. But eventually Karen waved him over. "Marcus," she said as he joined them. "Logan has something he'd like to say." Logan cleared his throat. "I wanted to apologize. Again. In front of everyone." His voice wasn't quite steady. He glanced around, aware of the eyes on him. Marcus crossed his arms. "And why is that?" Logan swallowed. "Because I judged you without knowing who you were." That was wrong. I was out of line. Marcus let the silence stretch. Then quietly, "It's not about knowing who I am, Mr. Carter. It's about treating everyone with the same respect, whether they own the building or sweep its floors." Logan's mouth tightened. "I understand that now." Karen stepped in. "Logan's been with us for years. We're handling things internally. But I wanted to make sure you heard it from him directly." Marcus nodded slowly. "All right." Logan held out his hand. Marcus stared at it for a long moment before shaking it once. Firm. The onlookers began to disperse, whispers fading into the clatter of construction noise. But the moment stayed with Marcus. Not because of the apology, but because, for once, it wasn't whispered behind closed doors. Later that week, as the expansion project moved into its final phases, Marcus found himself called into a public forum organized by the mall board. It wasn't about architecture. It was about community engagement, bringing in local voices, ensuring diversity in mall hiring practices, promoting minority-owned businesses within the new spaces. Marcus wasn't required to attend, but he did. The auditorium was packed, city officials, community leaders, even some press. Marcus took a seat near the front, not expecting to be called on. But halfway through, a moderator stepped up to the mic. "We'd like to invite Mr. Marcus Reed, chief architect of the expansion project, to share a few words." A ripple of murmurs ran through the crowd. Marcus stood slowly, feeling every eye on him. Up on the stage, under the bright lights, he adjusted the mic. He didn't have notes, didn't need them. "My name is Marcus Reed," he began, voice steady, "and I designed the building you're sitting in." That got a few quiet chuckles. "But more importantly, I designed it with a simple idea. That space belongs to everyone. That people from every background should see themselves reflected in the walls, the windows, the businesses inside." He paused, looking out over the rows of faces. "I know what it's like to walk into a place and feel like you don't belong, to have people assume you're in the wrong spot. I know because it happened to me, right here, last week." The room went utterly still. I could ignore it. I could say it's just part of life. But I believe buildings, like communities, only stand strong when every part is valued. Marcus's voice softened, but it carried. "So as we move forward with this expansion, I challenge all of us not just to build bigger malls, but to build better spaces. Spaces where no one feels out of place because of the color of their skin, the car they drive, or the clothes they wear." Silence followed. And then, slowly, applause. Not everyone, but enough. Marcus stepped down from the stage quietly, heart steady, knowing he'd said what needed saying. After the forum, Karen found him backstage. "That was brave," she said simply. Marcus shrugged. "It was the truth." She studied him for a moment, then smiled. "Well, I'd say you just designed something a lot bigger than a mall today." Marcus smiled back, tired but somehow lighter. Maybe, just maybe, things really could change. One story, one building, one conversation at a time. 2 weeks later, the Wellington Grand Mall expansion officially opened. The city mayor cut the ribbon. Reporters snapped photos. And while the executives smiled for the cameras, Marcus stood slightly off to the side, arms folded, watching the crowd flow in through the gleaming glass doors he had designed. It wasn't about the building anymore. It hadn't been for a while. As families streamed through the atrium, he noticed little things. A young black couple with a toddler, pausing to admire the hanging sculpture in the main hall. A group of immigrant shop owners, proudly unlocking the gates of their brand new kiosks. For all the headlines and corporate speeches, this was the part that mattered to Marcus. "Mr. Reed." The voice behind him was careful, measured. Marcus turned to see Logan Carter standing there again. This time in a plain suit, no security uniform. "I wasn't sure if I should come," Logan said quietly, "but I wanted to see it finished." Marcus studied him for a long second. "Funny," Marcus said finally. "You wouldn't have believed me if I told you 2 months ago I designed all this." Logan exhaled slowly. "No, I wouldn't have. But I get it now." They both watched the crowd for a moment in silence. "Things change," Logan said. People can too. Marcus didn't answer right away. Maybe, he said, but buildings last longer. That earned a quiet laugh from Logan. Before they could say anything else, a voice called out, "Marcus!" Karen approached, smiling, holding a phone in her hand. "Press wants a quick interview, if you're up for it." Marcus hesitated. Cameras had never been his thing. But maybe it wasn't about preference today. "I'll be there in a minute," he said. Karen nodded and walked off. Logan shifted his weight awkwardly. "I should go," he said. Marcus looked at him one more time, then extended his hand. "Take care of yourself, Logan." Logan shook it firmly. "You too, Mr. Reed." An hour later, after the speeches and handshakes, Marcus finally had a quiet moment to himself. He walked through one of the upper levels of the mall, taking it all in. The way the natural light poured through the skylights he had spent weeks designing. The flow of people moving like rivers through carefully planned spaces. And then, tucked into a corner of the West Wing, Marcus found something he hadn't expected. A plaque. Simple. Bronze. Mounted on a stone column. It read, "Dedicated to the vision of Marcus Reed, proof that strength is built on respect, not appearances." He stared at it for a long time. It wasn't just about him. It was about everyone who had ever been told they didn't belong. A quiet voice interrupted his thoughts. "Excuse me, sir." Marcus turned to see a young boy, maybe 12, standing nearby, clutching a sketchbook to his chest. The boy was black like Marcus, and judging by his nervous fidgeting, he hadn't worked up the courage to say anything until now. "My mom said you built this place." Marcus smiled gently. "That's right." The boy's eyes widened. "That's so cool. I want to be an architect too. Someday." Marcus crouched slightly so they were eye level. "What's your name?" "Deshawn." "Deshawn," Marcus said. "If you love buildings, and if you work hard, there's nothing stopping you." Deshawn bit his lip. "Even if you know not everyone thinks you can?" Marcus's voice softened. "Especially then." He pulled a business card from his pocket, scribbling something on the back with a pen. "Here, that's my number. You show me your drawings someday." Deshawn's face lit up like Christmas morning. "Really? Really?" The boy grinned, clutching the card like a golden ticket before running off to find his mother. And in that moment, standing in a mall filled with steel and glass and hard-earned pride, Marcus Reed felt something shift. Maybe it wasn't just about buildings after all. Maybe it was about what you left standing behind you when you were gone. That evening, as the crowds thinned and the last of the grand opening banners came down, Marcus found himself back at his old car. Same rusty sedan, same scratches on the door. But this time he didn't care who was watching. He slid into the driver's seat, started the engine, and let it idle for a moment. The radio crackled softly, playing an old Marvin Gaye song his father used to love. Marcus smiled to himself, looking one last time at the glowing mall lights through his windshield. Then he shifted into drive and pulled away, disappearing into the city night, leaving behind more than just a building. Leaving behind a reminder that respect isn't something you wear. It's something you build, one story at a time. A month passed, then two. The expansion settled into city life like it had always been there. Shops opened, cafes filled, and the Wellington Grand Mall became more than a commercial space. It became a symbol, at least to those who knew the story. But stories have a way of echoing beyond their first telling. One crisp autumn morning, Marcus received an unexpected call. "Mr. Reed, this is Lisa Martinez from the City Beacon. We'd love to feature you in a profile for our Faces of Change series." Marcus almost declined. He'd never been one for spotlights. His work spoke for itself. But then he remembered Deshawn, clutching his sketchbook. Remembered Logan's awkward apology. Remembered every long, slow moment it had taken to stand where he stood now. So he said yes. A week later, the article went live. It wasn't about glossy buildings or million-dollar contracts. It was about growing up as the only black kid in architecture school. About walking into rooms where no one expected you to be in charge. About a rusty car and a security guard's mistake. The headline read, "Building More Than Walls. Marcus Reed's Quiet Revolution." And it wasn't just local. The story spread, syndicated across national outlets, picked up on social media. For a few days, Marcus's inbox overflowed with messages, some from aspiring architects, some from strangers simply saying thank you. But one message stood out. It wasn't an email. It was a letter, handwritten, the kind no one sent anymore. Marcus opened it carefully. The handwriting was neat, measured. "Dear Mr. Reed, you don't know me. My name is Leonard Carter. I'm Logan's father." Marcus's breath caught for a second. "My son told me everything that happened at the mall. I want you to know I raised him better than that. Or I thought I did. But sometimes the world teaches lessons late. I'm a retired construction foreman. Spent 40 years on sites just like the one where you built that mall. I've seen what men like you go through. I should have spoken up more when I had the chance. Thank you for standing your ground. And for showing my son and men like me what dignity really looks like. Respectfully, Leonard Carter." Marcus sat back in his chair, the letter trembling slightly in his hand. It wasn't about Logan anymore. It was about all the Logans, all the Lennets, all the people stuck between knowing better and doing better. By winter, Marcus had been invited to speak at conferences. Universities asked him to guest lecture. Panels on urban design wanted his input not just for his buildings, but for the quiet philosophy he carried with him: design as inclusion. Still, he kept his old car. Not because he couldn't afford something newer, but because it reminded him of everything he'd built, one hard-earned mile at a time. One snowy evening, he parked in front of a small community center on the south side of the city. Inside, a group of teenagers waited. Not for a speech, not for a seminar, for a workshop. Marcus set up the blueprints, laid out pencils and rulers, and greeted each student by name as they walked in. Among them, Deshaun, now taller, his sketches sharper, more confident. As the session began, Marcus moved from table to table, offering advice, adjusting angles, suggesting materials. But more than that, he listened. Listened to their stories, their frustrations, their dreams. One girl showed him a design for a library shaped like folded paper cranes. Another boy had drawn a skate park blended into a public plaza. Marcus treated each with the same respect he gave billion-dollar clients. And by the end of the night, as the kids packed up their things and headed out into the snow, Deshaun hung back. He held up a fresh page from his sketchbook. "This one's for you," he said quietly. Marcus took it. The drawing was simple. A tall building, sleek and modern, with the words Reed Tower written across the top. Marcus's throat tightened. "You really think I need my name on a tower, huh?" he asked with a smile. Deshaun shrugged. "You already built one." And for the first time in a long while, Marcus couldn't find the words to answer. He just rested a hand on the boy's shoulder and nodded. On the drive home, with snow dusting the windshield, Marcus thought about his father again. How he'd taught Marcus to fix that old car. How he'd said, "People will tell you it's not personal." Maybe that was true. But Marcus had learned something else along the way. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's as personal as the color of your skin or the wheels you drive or the name on your paycheck. But personal wasn't weakness. It was what made the fight worth it. When he pulled into his driveway, the porch light flicked on automatically. A small detail he'd installed himself years ago. Smart sensors. Energy efficient. Design wasn't just about making things look good. It was about making life easier. Making the world just a little more fair. That's what buildings could do. That's what people could do, if they chose to. 1 year later, the city dedicated a new public plaza adjacent to the mall. Marcus stood on the edge of the crowd, hands in his pockets. There was no plaque this time, no ribbon cutting, just music, food trucks, families gathered around fire pits in the crisp spring air. Karen found him there holding 2 cups of coffee. "Still can't believe we pulled it off," she said, handing him one. "Not bad," Marcus agreed, glancing around. And then he noticed Logan. Not in uniform, just a civilian now. Standing beside Leonard Carter, his father, both men smiling as they watched a group of kids play soccer across the plaza. It wasn't about erasing the past. It was about building something new over it. Something stronger. Karen nudged him gently. Thinking about your next project? Marcus sipped his coffee. Always. But in truth, he already knew. It wasn't another mall. Or another tower. It was people. Community. The invisible structures that held them together. Because buildings didn't just rise from concrete and steel. They rose from trust. From respect. From the belief that everyone deserves a place to stand. Marcus smiled, eyes on the horizon, as the sun dipped low and the plaza filled with light. And quietly, without fanfare, another kind of foundation settled into place. Not one drawn on blueprints, but in the heart, where it mattered most. Nd.